Elvis Presley died today. He was 42. Apparently it was a heart attack.
When the paramedics arrived at Graceland Mansion on August 16, 1977, they found Elvis Presley lying face down on the cold bathroom floor. The man once known as the King of Rock and Roll was only 42 years old. By the time the autopsy was completed, the results painted a horrifying picture. 14 different drugs were discovered in his system, including morphine, codeine, and the powerful sedative methaqualone. Investigators later learned that his personal physician, Dr. George Nicopolis, had prescribed Elvis more than 10,000 doses of narcotics, stimulants, and sedatives during just the final 8 months of his life. 10,000 doses for one man. Yet the tragedy becomes even harder to understand when you remember who Elvis Presley once was.
He was found at his home in Memphis, not breathing.
This was the same man who had walked into a Memphis Cadillac dealership one afternoon and casually purchased 14 brand new Cadillacs simply because he wanted to give them away. Some went to friends, some to employees, and some to complete strangers who happened to be standing nearby. That kind of generosity became part of the Elvis legend. To millions of people, he was not just a singer. He was a symbol of joy, charisma, and impossible success, which makes the final image of him alone on that bathroom floor feel almost impossible to reconcile. How did the most beloved entertainer in America become so unrecognizable to the people who loved him most? To understand that, you have to return to the very beginning. Long before the fame, the screaming crowds, or the white jumpsuits, there was a tiny two-room shotgun shack in Tupelo, Mississippi, where Elvis Presley entered the world beside a tragedy that would quietly shape his entire life. Elvis Aaron Presley was born on January 8, 1935. 35 minutes earlier, his identical twin brother, Jesse Garon Presley, had been delivered stillborn. Elvis survived. Jesse did not. The loss devastated Elvis's mother, Gladys Presley, in ways she never fully recovered from. Family friends later described the bond between Gladys and Elvis as almost inseparable, even obsessive. She poured every ounce of love, fear, and emotional energy into the surviving son she refused to lose.
His road manager tried to revive him. He failed. A hospital tried to revive him. It failed. His doctor pronounced him dead at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
They spoke to each other in baby talk long after Elvis had grown into a teenager. She walked him to school every day until he was 15 years old. To Gladys, Elvis was not simply her child. He was the son she had left. The Presley family lived in extreme poverty. Elvis's father, Vernon Presley, drifted from one odd job to another, struggling constantly to provide stability. When Elvis was only 3 years old, Vernon was arrested for altering a check written by a local farmer. The amount was small, but the punishment was severe. Vernon spent 8 months inside Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchman, one of the harshest prisons in the South.
The end, at an early age, of one of the two most spectacular careers in the history of American entertainment, the other being Frank Sinatra's.
During his imprisonment, the family lost their home completely. Gladys and young Elvis moved between relatives' houses, carrying little more than a few personal belongings and whatever hope they still had left. In the middle of all that instability, music became the one thing that never disappeared. Gladys regularly took Elvis to the First Assembly of God Church, where gospel music filled the building every Sunday morning. The emotional intensity of those church services left a permanent mark on him. The soaring harmonies, the call and response singing, the raw spiritual energy of the congregation, Elvis absorbed every bit of it. Years later, even after becoming the biggest music star on earth, traces of those gospel roots could still be heard in his voice.
Long after he became an institution, here was how Presley looked and sounded on an NBC television special 4 seasons ago.
At the age of 10, Elvis entered a singing competition at the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show. He was so small that he had to stand on a chair just to reach the microphone. Nervously, he sang Red Foley's Old Shep to the crowd. He finished in 5th place, but for Elvis, the applause mattered more than the ranking. For the first time, he experienced what it felt like to move people with his voice. In 1948, the Presley family relocated to Memphis, Tennessee, hoping for a fresh start and a better future. They settled into public housing at Lauderdale Courts, where Elvis spent much of his teenage years feeling awkward, shy, and isolated. Other kids often bullied him for being quiet and different, but Elvis carried a guitar almost everywhere he went. He played during lunch breaks, outside apartment buildings, and for anyone willing to stop and listen. After graduating from high school, Elvis found work driving trucks for Crown Electric Company. But even while delivering supplies across Memphis, his mind remained fixed on music. During lunch breaks, he often drove past a small studio on Union Avenue called Memphis Recording Service. For $4, anyone could walk in and record a 2-sided acetate record. At the time, Elvis Presley was just another unknown truck driver passing by that building. But history was already moving quietly toward him.
And along the way, he was married in 1967 to Priscilla Ann Bullier.
In the summer of 1953, an 18-year-old Elvis Presley walked into the Memphis Recording Service carrying $4 in his pocket and a nervous excitement he tried hard to hide. The small studio sat on Union Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee, and for a few dollars, ordinary people could record their own songs onto acetate discs. Elvis told the receptionist, Marion Keisker, that he wanted to make a record for his mother. It sounded simple enough, but Keisker immediately noticed there was something unusual about him. His voice did not sound like anybody else walking through those doors. After Elvis finished recording, Keisker wrote a short note for her boss, Sam Phillips. It simply said that the young man had an interesting sound and should be remembered. Phillips, the founder of Sun Records, had spent years searching for a breakthrough artist. Later in life, he famously explained that he wanted to find a white singer who could capture the emotional depth, rhythm, and energy of black music at a time when segregated radio stations kept white and black audiences divided. Phillips was not looking to copy black artists. He believed music could cross boundaries the rest of America refused to cross.
The very symbol of sex for all of the millions or hundreds of thousands of teenagers was married only once, and then relatively late.
Nearly a year later, Phillips called Elvis back to the studio and paired him with 2 local musicians, guitarist Scotty Moore and bassist Bill Black. At first, the session went nowhere. They tried ballads. They tried country songs. Nothing worked. The room felt stiff and awkward, and after several frustrating hours, everyone was close to giving up. Then something unexpected happened. During a break, Elvis picked up his guitar and started fooling around with an old blues song called That's All Right, originally recorded by Arthur Crudup. But Elvis didn't sing it like a traditional blues track. He sped it up, loosened the rhythm, and attacked it with an almost reckless energy. Scotty Moore jumped in with his guitar. Bill Black followed on bass. Suddenly the room came alive. From the control booth, Sam Phillips heard something he had never heard before. He burst out and told them to stop immediately and start again from the top. In that instant, the sound that would change popular music forever was born. Within days, a Memphis radio DJ played the recording on air, and the response was explosive. The station's phone lines lit up with listeners demanding to know who the singer was. Many people assumed Elvis was black because of the style and emotion in his voice. Others simply could not believe what they were hearing.
There was a little girl that I was seeing quite often over there that her father was in the Air Force. And
Phillips quickly pressed the song into a single, and it began selling rapidly across the local region. Almost overnight, Elvis Presley became the most talked-about young performer in Tennessee. As Elvis started performing at clubs, school gyms, and county fairs, audiences reacted in ways nobody fully understood. Teenage girls screamed uncontrollably the moment he walked on stage. Adults complained that his performances were vulgar and dangerous. Ministers preached sermons condemning him from church pulpits. His stage movements, the shaking legs, the swiveling hips, the wild bursts of energy, caused so much controversy that television producers eventually filmed him only from the waist up to avoid public outrage. But while the country argued about Elvis Presley, other people saw something else entirely. They saw money. One of those men was a carnival promoter who called himself Colonel Tom Parker. The title was fake. So was much of the rest of his identity. Parker's real name was Andreas Cornelis van Kuijk, and he was a Dutch immigrant who had entered the United States illegally years earlier. He never obtained legal citizenship and spent most of his life terrified that his past would be exposed. That fear quietly shaped the entire future of Elvis Presley's career. Because Parker could never risk international travel, Elvis never toured outside North America. Despite becoming the most famous entertainer on earth, he would never perform overseas. No European tours, no world concerts, no global appearances that might place Parker under immigration scrutiny at customs checkpoints.
There were some pictures made of her, but it was no big romance.
Parker approached Elvis's father, Vernon Presley, and convinced him that the young star needed professional management before dishonest promoters took advantage of him. In 1955, Elvis officially signed with Parker. The deal initially gave Parker 25% of Elvis's earnings, though over time that percentage climbed even higher. Some estimates suggested Parker eventually controlled close to half of everything Elvis made. At first, the arrangement looked brilliant. Parker secured Elvis a contract with RCA Records, arranged major television appearances, and transformed him into a national phenomenon almost overnight. By 1956, Elvis Presley was no longer just a singer from Memphis. He was the biggest entertainment star in America. But the deeper Elvis sank into Parker's system, the clearer it became that Parker's decisions were not designed to build Elvis's artistic legacy. They were designed to maximize profit. Serious Hollywood directors expressed interest in Elvis early on. Some believed he had genuine dramatic potential. Elvis himself desperately wanted to be respected as a real actor. He admired performers like James Dean and Marlon Brando and hoped to make films with emotional depth and meaning. But Parker had no interest in artistic risks. Instead, he pushed Elvis into a relentless cycle of lightweight musical comedies that could be filmed quickly and guaranteed easy box office profits. Between 1960 and 1969, Elvis appeared in 27 movies, most of them nearly identical. Elvis plays a charming young man. Elvis sings several songs. Elvis romances a beautiful woman. A small misunderstanding happens. Everything gets resolved before the credits roll. The scripts were thin, the soundtracks were rushed, the films made money, but they slowly drained Elvis creatively. Privately, Elvis admitted to friends that he was embarrassed by many of the movies. He knew audiences were beginning to laugh at him instead of admire him. Yet he kept accepting the roles because Parker had carefully structured Elvis's finances in a way that made stopping nearly impossible. Despite earning millions of dollars and becoming one of the most recognizable people on earth, Elvis Presley was constantly short on cash. The public assumed he was unimaginably wealthy, but behind the scenes, his finances were tangled in contracts, bad business decisions, and the iron grip of Colonel Tom Parker. Parker always took his percentage before Elvis saw a dime, and over the years that percentage grew larger and larger. Expensive homes, enormous staff payrolls, endless gifts for friends and strangers, and Parker's own financial schemes created a situation where Elvis was working constantly just to keep the machine around him alive. And during the height of his fame, tragedy struck in a way that permanently changed him. In 1958, Elvis was drafted into the United States Army. Because he was already the biggest entertainer in America, military officials offered him safer alternatives. He could have joined a special entertainment division where he would perform for troops while avoiding the harsher realities of military life. But Colonel Parker saw a public relations opportunity. He insisted Elvis serve as a regular soldier so the public would see him as humble, patriotic, and grounded. At first, the decision worked. Americans admired the fact that Elvis served like an ordinary young man instead of using his fame to escape responsibility. But while Elvis was stationed in Germany, the emotional foundation of his entire life collapsed. His mother, Gladys Presley, suffered a heart attack and died in August 1958 at just 46 years old. The loss shattered him. Those present at the funeral later described scenes of overwhelming grief. Elvis reportedly threw himself across his mother's casket, sobbing uncontrollably as relatives struggled to pull him away. Friends noticed a change in him almost immediately afterward. The playful energy he once carried seemed dimmer. The confidence became more fragile. People close to Elvis would later say he never truly recovered from losing Gladys, because she had been the one person he trusted without reservation. Her death left an emotional void that fame, money, and applause could never fill. It was also during Elvis's time in Germany that another relationship began, one that would later become one of the most discussed parts of his personal life. A fellow soldier introduced Elvis to a quiet 14-year-old girl named Priscilla Beaulieu. Elvis was 24 years old at the time. Over the following months, Elvis charmed both Priscilla and her parents, eventually convincing them to allow her to spend time with him socially. After Elvis returned to the United States, Priscilla later moved to Memphis to finish high school while living under arrangements closely supervised by Elvis and his inner circle. Their relationship continued for years before they finally married in 1967. To the public, they looked like the perfect glamorous couple. But privately, the marriage revealed a more controlling side of Elvis Presley that few people outside his personal life fully saw. Priscilla later described how Elvis carefully dictated nearly every aspect of her appearance. He chose her clothes. He instructed her on how to style her hair. He preferred dramatic dark eye makeup, towering black hair, and a carefully crafted image that matched the fantasy he carried in his mind. Even her social interactions were heavily monitored. Over time, she began feeling less like a wife and more like someone being molded into a character Elvis wanted to create. She loved him deeply, but Elvis's world revolved around control, loyalty, and image. There was little room inside it for independence or disagreement. By the late 1960s, Elvis himself was also beginning to feel trapped. Years of shallow Hollywood musicals had drained him creatively. His movies still made money, but critics mocked them, and Elvis knew they lacked substance. Meanwhile, music itself was changing rapidly around him. New artists like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones had completely reshaped popular culture. Their music felt rebellious, modern, and unpredictable. Compared to them, Elvis feared he was beginning to look outdated, a relic from another era. For perhaps the first time in his career, he genuinely worried that the world was moving on without him. Then came an opportunity that changed everything. In 1968, NBC approached Elvis about starring in a television special. Colonel Parker envisioned a safe and profitable Christmas variety show filled with cheerful songs and harmless entertainment. Elvis hated the idea. He wanted something stripped down, emotional, and real. After years of quietly obeying Parker, Elvis finally pushed back. The result became one of the greatest comebacks in entertainment history. The 1968 comeback special showed audiences a version of Elvis they had not seen in years. Dressed head to toe in black leather, sweating under bright stage lights, Elvis sat with a small group of musicians and performed with raw intensity. There were no ridiculous movie plots, no forced comedy scenes, just Elvis Presley singing with the hunger and electricity that had once terrified parents and electrified teenagers. The performance stunned audiences. It reminded the world why Elvis mattered in the first place. More importantly, it reminded Elvis himself. The special became a massive success and immediately revived his career. Soon afterward, Elvis signed a residency deal with the International Hotel in Las Vegas, opening in 1969. The performances were extraordinary. Elvis was in strong physical condition. His voice sounded richer than ever, and the atmosphere inside the showroom felt almost spiritual. Audience members described the experience as overwhelming, almost religious in intensity. Night after night, Elvis walked on stage and commanded the room like no performer alive. But once again, beneath the glamour, Colonel Parker had structured the deal in a way that benefited himself as much as Elvis. The hotel paid Elvis a flat performance fee, while Parker quietly secured separate side arrangements connected to the casino itself. Parker had become a compulsive gambler, losing staggering amounts of money at blackjack tables and roulette wheels. And as his gambling addiction spiraled deeper, Elvis Presley increasingly became the engine funding it all. By the early 1970s, the Las Vegas residency that looked glamorous from the outside had quietly become a trap. Colonel Tom Parker owed the International Hotel millions of dollars in gambling debts after years of catastrophic losses inside the casino. The residency was no longer just a career move for Elvis Presley. In many ways, it had become a mechanism for paying off Parker's personal failures. Night after night, Elvis walked onto that stage not simply to entertain audiences, but to keep the entire machine around him financially alive. The schedule was brutal: 2 performances a night, endless rehearsals, constant travel between Vegas and touring dates across the country. Some evenings, Elvis performed while sick, exhausted, or emotionally unraveling behind the scenes. The pressure never stopped, and eventually he turned to the one thing that seemed capable of keeping him moving: prescription drugs. At first, the pills appeared almost functional. Amphetamines gave him energy before performances. Barbiturates and sedatives helped him sleep afterward. Painkillers dulled the physical strain his body was enduring, but over time, the medications stopped being tools and became necessities. That was when Dr. George Nicopolis, known everywhere around Elvis as Dr. Nick, entered the center of the story. Dr. Nick became more than Elvis's physician. He became a permanent fixture inside Elvis's inner circle, traveling with him constantly and supplying a staggering amount of medication. Years later, Dr. Nick defended himself by claiming he prescribed drugs in an attempt to regulate substances Elvis was already obtaining elsewhere. But the numbers told a frightening story. In just the final 2.5 years of Elvis Presley's life, Dr. Nick prescribed more than 12,000 pills and doses of various medications, including stimulants, sedatives, painkillers, and anti-anxiety drugs. The drugs slowly transformed him. Friends who had once known Elvis as warm, playful, and charismatic began seeing someone increasingly paranoid and unpredictable. He carried loaded guns almost everywhere he went and developed a dangerous habit of firing them impulsively. One night, he shot a television set simply because singer Robert Goulet appeared on screen. During another argument, he fired at a chandelier inside his home. On one occasion, he pointed a gun directly at a member of his own entourage and pulled the trigger. The chamber happened to be empty, but by that point, the people around Elvis no longer knew where the boundaries were anymore. The atmosphere around him had become unstable, tense, and unpredictable. His physical appearance also began changing dramatically. His weight fluctuated constantly as the drugs wreaked havoc on his body. Some nights he walked onto the Las Vegas stage looking bloated, pale, and barely focused. He forgot lyrics to songs he had performed for decades. He drifted into long, incoherent monologues between numbers, rambling to audiences for 20 or 30 minutes while musicians awkwardly waited behind him. Fans who came expecting the unstoppable Elvis Presley sometimes found a man visibly struggling to stay present. Other nights, he canceled performances entirely without warning, leaving thousands of ticket holders standing outside casinos confused and disappointed. Rumors about his health spread rapidly, but the people around Elvis worked constantly to protect the image and keep the money flowing. Yet even during this collapse, another side of Elvis never disappeared. His generosity remained almost unbelievable. He still gave away expensive gifts with the same impulsive kindness that had defined him at his peak. He bought cars for people he barely knew. Sometimes he would walk into dealerships and purchase multiple Cadillacs at once, handing them out to friends, employees, and complete strangers. On one occasion, Elvis saw a young woman crying at a dealership because she could not afford the car she wanted. Without hesitation, he bought the vehicle for her on the spot. He paid funeral expenses for families he had never met. He quietly handed money to struggling workers, hotel employees, and fans without asking for publicity or recognition. This contradiction became one of the most haunting parts of Elvis Presley's story. The same man swallowing handfuls of pills every morning. The same man frightening friends with loaded weapons and spiraling deeper into addiction could turn around that very afternoon and change a stranger's life with an act of extraordinary kindness. The saint and the self-destruction existed inside the same person. And perhaps the darkest truth of all was this: many of the people surrounding Elvis had little incentive to stop what was happening. Colonel Parker profited from keeping Elvis working non-stop. The Las Vegas casinos profited from his residency. Dr. Nick remained deeply embedded inside Elvis's world as the provider of the medications keeping him functional. Even members of Elvis's inner circle, the group later known as the Memphis Mafia, depended financially on staying close to him. A healthy, sober Elvis Presley could have changed everything. A sober Elvis might have fired people. A sober Elvis might have demanded control over his money. A sober Elvis might have examined the contracts and discovered just how much Colonel Parker had hidden from him over the years. By 1972, the marriage between Elvis and Priscilla Presley was collapsing under the weight of everything Elvis had become. Years later, Priscilla would quietly admit that the man she left no longer resembled the man she had fallen in love with. The drugs, the isolation, the emotional instability, and the constant need for control had hollowed him out from the inside. The warmth was still there in flashes, but it was buried beneath exhaustion, paranoia, and dependency. When Priscilla filed for divorce, Elvis did not fight her. There were no dramatic public battles, no attempts to destroy her reputation. In fact, Elvis gave her nearly everything she requested in the settlement. Part of him seemed to understand that she was escaping something he could no longer control himself. But after she left, the final decline accelerated rapidly. The few remaining guardrails in Elvis Presley's life disappeared. In the last 2 years of his life, Elvis continued touring relentlessly, often performing more than 100 concerts a year despite his worsening physical condition. The schedule remained brutal, and the people surrounding him continued pushing forward because the machine still generated enormous amounts of money. Footage from these final performances is heartbreaking to watch today. Some nights Elvis appeared swollen and heavily medicated, struggling to stay focused beneath the stage lights. His speech drifted, his movements slowed. There were moments where he looked confused, exhausted, even physically unable to continue. Yet the crowds still filled every arena. And that may be the saddest part of all. The audiences did not see the addiction first. They saw the memory of who Elvis had once been. They saw the boy from Tupelo who changed music forever. They saw the young man in the black leather suit during the 1968 comeback special. They saw the face, the smile, and the voice that had once made the entire world feel different. People loved Elvis Presley so fiercely that many chose not to fully see what was happening in front of them. On the night of August 15, 1977, Elvis returned to Graceland after a late-night trip to his dentist, where he reportedly received additional medication. Back at the mansion, his girlfriend, Ginger Alden, eventually fell asleep beside him. When she woke the following afternoon, Elvis was gone from the bed. She found him collapsed on the bathroom floor. He was not breathing. Elvis Aaron Presley was pronounced dead at Baptist Memorial Hospital at 3:30 p.m. on August 16, 1977. He was only 42 years old. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrhythmia, an irregular heartbeat. But the toxicology report painted a far darker and more complicated picture. 14 different drugs were found in his system at the time of death. Sedatives, painkillers, narcotics, stimulants. The substances that had slowly consumed him for years were still coursing through his body when his heart finally gave out. In the aftermath, Dr. George Nikopoulos faced charges for overprescribing medication to Elvis Presley and several other patients. Although he was eventually acquitted in court, the controversy surrounding his medical practices never disappeared. He retained his medical license for years afterward before it was finally revoked. Colonel Tom Parker, meanwhile, continued behaving exactly as he always had. Shortly after Elvis's death, Parker sold the rights to Elvis Presley's master recordings to RCA Records for a lump sum payment of $5.5 million, a fraction of what the catalog was actually worth. The decision shocked many people close to the Presley estate, but Parker desperately needed immediate cash, likely because of his mounting gambling debts. Even after Elvis died, Parker continued extracting money from the empire Elvis built. Eventually, Priscilla Presley stepped in and took legal action to remove Parker from control over the estate. Without that intervention, much of Elvis's legacy might have been drained away entirely. And when you step back and look at the full story, it almost feels impossible to believe it really happened. A poor boy born in a tiny Mississippi shack grows up to become the most famous entertainer on earth. A man who transformed popular music forever. A performer worshipped by millions. Yet behind the fame stood a fake colonel manipulating his career, a doctor feeding his addictions, and an entire system profiting from keeping him dependent, exhausted, and unable to escape. If Elvis Presley were a fictional character, most people would say the story was unrealistic, too tragic, too cruel, too unbelievable. But Elvis was not fiction. He was a real man, a man who gave away cars to strangers while privately falling apart, a man who made millions of people happy while quietly becoming more isolated every year. A man the world adored so completely that it continued applauding even as he visibly deteriorated in front of them. And perhaps that is the most haunting truth about Elvis Presley. The world did not lose him suddenly. It watched him disappear slowly. Rest in peace, Elvis Presley. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories about the lives, triumphs, and tragedies of Hollywood's most unforgettable legends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.